You stand in the shadows of the great palace of Constantinople, the year 955, your silk slippers silent against the polished marble that has witnessed 1,000 conspiracies. At 15, your name is Theodora, daughter of Emperor Constantine, Porphyrogenitus, and you are about to learn that imperial blood is both blessing and curse. The purple silk of your gown, dyed with the sacred murex that only imperial hands may touch, feels like a shroud as you wait for your father's summons. Through the latticed windows, you can see the golden dome of Hagia Sophia catching the morning light. But today even God's house seems to mock you with its splendor. The eunuch Chamberlain Bringas glides toward you with the peculiar silence of his castrated kind, his pale hands folded within his sleeves like a praying mantis preparing to strike. His voice, neither masculine nor feminine, carries the weight of imperial authority as he speaks the words that will shatter your childhood forever. Princess Theodora, His Imperial Majesty commands your presence. The matter of your marriage to General Nikephoros Phokas has been decided. The name falls from his lips like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of dread through your young heart. You have heard the stories whispered by the palace women, tales of Nikephoros the White Death, the general whose name strikes terror into the hearts of Arabs and Bulgars alike. At 53, he is older than your father, a man carved from marble and steel whose hands have spilled so much blood they can never truly be clean. His face bears the scars of a dozen campaigns, his body the marks of wounds that would have killed lesser men. He has buried 3 wives already, each one dead before her 20th year. Their graves unmarked stones in the imperial cemetery dot as you enter your father's presence chamber. The weight of centuries presses down upon you. Constantine Porphyrogenitus, born in the purple chamber that gives imperial children their sacred title, sits upon the throne of New Rome with the weariness of a man who has learned that power is a burden heavier than any crown. His purple boots, the mark of his divine authority, seem to mock the trembling in your legs as you prostrate yourself before the man who gave you life and now prepares to trade it away. Rise, my daughter, he says, and there is genuine sorrow in his voice, the pain of a father who loves his child but loves his empire more. You know why you are here. The eastern frontiers burn with Arab fire, and our enemies grow bold. Nikephoros Phokas commands the loyalty of every soldier from Trebizond to Antioch. Without him, the empire bleeds. With him bound to our house through marriage, we secure not just victory but survival. The mathematics of empire are written in blood and gold, and you are learning to read their cruel equations. Your virginity, your youth, your imperial bloodline, these are coins to be spent in the marketplace of power. And your father is about to make a purchase that will cost you everything you are, and everything you might have been. The general himself steps forward from the shadows where he has been waiting, his dark eyes studying you with the same calculating intensity he once used to survey enemy fortifications. She is young, Nikephoros says, his voice rough as grinding millstones. Good. The young can be shaped, molded to purpose. I have no time for a wife who brings her own ideas to my bed. His words are not cruel by intention, merely practical. The assessment of a man who has spent his life reducing complex problems to simple solutions. But they cut you nonetheless, transforming you from princess to property in the space of a sentence. The wedding ceremony takes place 3 weeks later, in the chapel of the Holy Apostles, where the bones of Constantine the Great rest in their golden sarcophagus. You walk down the aisle in robes of cloth of gold, your head crowned with a diadem of pearls that once belonged to Empress Theodora the Great, she who raised herself from actress to autocrat through will and cunning. The irony is not lost on you. You bear her name, but seem destined for a fate she would have scorned. The patriarch himself, Polyeuctos, performs the ceremony, his ancient hands trembling as he places the marriage crown upon your head. The ritual is magnificent and terrible, transforming you from virgin princess to military wife through words spoken in the shadow of martyr's bones. As Nikephoros places the ring upon your finger, you feel the last of your childhood slipping away like water through cupped hands. Your wedding night is a lesson in the brutal economics of imperial marriage. In the general's private chambers, surrounded by maps of distant battlefields and trophies taken from defeated enemies, you learn what it means to be currency rather than person. Nikephoros approaches the marriage bed with the same methodical precision he brings to siege warfare, viewing your body as territory to be conquered and held. There's no cruelty in his touch, but neither is there tenderness, only the efficient claiming of what contract and law have made his right. You will give me sons, he tells you as he extinguishes the oil lamps, leaving only the moonlight streaming through the palace windows to illuminate your tears. Strong sons who carry both Phokas' military genius and Macedonian imperial blood. This is your purpose now, your only purpose. In the darkness, you bite your lip until you taste blood, swallowing the sobs that would only prove your weakness. The months that follow teach you the first brutal lesson of survival in the Byzantine court. Invisibility is a form of armor. As Nycteros campaigns on the eastern frontier, winning victories that make his name a synonym for Roman triumph, you learn to navigate the treacherous currents of palace life. The Empress Eudokia, your stepmother, watches you with the cold calculation of a woman who knows that imperial daughters-in-law can become threats to her own children's inheritance. You cultivate the eunuchs who truly run the palace, learning that Bringas, despite his role in arranging your marriage, can be a valuable ally if properly managed. His network of spies and informants extends throughout the empire, and information is the most precious commodity in a world where knowledge of an enemy's plans can mean the difference between life and death. Power, he tells you during one of your carefully orchestrated encounters in the palace library, is not about strength or bloodline. It is about knowing what others need and being indispensable in providing it. When your first child is born, in 957, a son you name Constantine, after your grandfather, you experience both the greatest joy and deepest fear of your young life. As you hold the infant in your arms, his tiny fingers grasping yours with instinctive trust, you understand that you now have something precious beyond measure, and therefore something that can be taken away to hurt you. In the Byzantine court, love is vulnerability, and vulnerability is often fatal. Nycteros returns from his campaigns transformed by victory into something approaching divinity in the eyes of his soldiers and the people of Constantinople. His conquest of Crete and his victories in Syria have made him the most popular man in the empire, a living legend whose very name brings hope to Roman hearts. But popularity, as you are learning, is a double-edged sword in the world of imperial politics. Your father watches his son-in-law's growing influence with the nervous eyes of a man who remembers that successful generals have a habit of becoming emperors. The tensions come to a head in 959, when Constantine Porphyrogenitus dies suddenly. Some whisper by poison, others claim by the weight of his own fears. On his deathbed, he names his son Romanos as his heir, but Romanos is only 21, untested in war and weak in character. The empire faces enemies on every border: Arabs in the east, Bulgars in the north, pirates in the Mediterranean, and the army looks not to their young emperor, but to the general who has never known defeat. You watch from the shadows as the conspiracy unfolds, as ambitious men make their calculations and place their bets. Bringas, now the power behind the throne, attempts to sideline Nycteros by offering him distant commands that would remove him from the capital. But your husband has not survived 30 years of warfare by being naive about the intentions of his enemies. The confrontation, when it comes, is swift and decisive. On the night of December 11th, 963, the Scalae Palatinae, the elite Imperial Guard regiment that Nycteros has carefully cultivated, surround the great palace. Your husband, the man who claimed you as spoils of war, now claims the throne itself through right of conquest. Emperor Romanos, faced with the choice between death and exile, chooses exile, fleeing to a monastery where he will spend the rest of his days in prayer and regret. As dawn breaks over Constantinople, you find yourself transformed overnight from general's wife to empress of the Romans. The purple buskins are placed upon your feet, the diadem of imperial authority upon your head. But you understand with crystal clarity that your elevation is not recognition of your worth, but acknowledgement of your utility. Nycteros needs the legitimacy that only connection to the Macedonian dynasty can provide, and you are that connection made flesh. Your coronation in Hagia Sophia is a magnificent spectacle designed to overawe potential opposition and demonstrate the new emperor's divine approval. As Patriarch Polyeuctus places the crown upon your head, your eyes meet those of your young son Constantine, now 5 years old and heir to an empire his stepfather has seized by force. In his innocent gaze, you see both your greatest joy and your most terrible responsibility. You must keep him alive in a world where emperors' children are often viewed as inconvenient obstacles to succession. The early years of Nycteros' reign are marked by military triumph and domestic tension. Your husband proves himself one of the greatest warrior emperors in Roman history, reconquering vast territories that had been lost to Islam for centuries. Antioch, the great city where St. Paul first preached, returns to Christian rule after 300 years of Arab domination. But each victory in the field brings new dangers at home. As success breeds envy and envy breeds conspiracy, you learn to read the subtle signs of treachery in the movements of courtiers, the hesitation in a eunuch's smile, the too casual questions about your husband's whereabouts and plans. The palace becomes a battlefield where words are weapons and silence can be either shield or trap. You cultivate your own network of informants, using your position as empress to build relationships with the wives and daughters of ambitious men. Learning their secrets and holding them like daggers to be drawn when needed. Your second son, born in 965, you name Basil after your husband's patron saint. But the child lives only 8 months before succumbing to the fevers that claim so many infants in that disease-haunted age. As you hold his small body, still warm but already beginning to grow cold, something inside you hardens into steel. Grief is a luxury you cannot afford in a world where showing weakness invites attack. You bury your son with imperial honors, but bury your tears deeper still, transforming sorrow into strength and loss into ruthless determination. The conspiracy that finally claims Nycphros is born not from popular discontent, but from the jealousy of those closest to power. John Tzimiskes, your husband's nephew and most trusted general, has grown tired of serving when he believes he could rule. The plot he weaves is intricate as any tapestry, involving disaffected palace guards, ambitious courtiers, and even some of the emperor's own relatives who resent his iron discipline and military priorities. On the night of December 10, 969, exactly 6 years after Nycphros seized the throne, you are awakened by sounds that every imperial spouse learns to fear: the clash of weapons in palace corridors, the shouts of men fighting for their lives. From your chamber window, you can see flames beginning to lick at the palace walls as the conspirators attempt to smoke out the emperor. Your husband, the unconquerable general, meets his end not on a distant battlefield, but in his own bedchamber, struck down by men he trusted. As Nycphros lies dying, his blood pooling on the marble floor that has witnessed so many imperial deaths, he manages to whisper final words that will haunt you for the rest of your life. Protect the boy. Promise me. His eyes, growing dim with approaching death, fix on yours with desperate intensity. Constantine must live. The dynasty must continue. You promise. Though you know the weight of that oath may destroy you. The hours that follow your husband's assassination are among the most dangerous of your life. Tzimiskes, now styling himself Emperor John I, faces a dilemma that has confronted every usurper in Byzantine history: what to do with the family of the man he has murdered. Your son Constantine, now 11 years old, represents a permanent threat to the new regime, a living reminder of legitimacy stolen. But killing an imperial child carries risks of its own. It might trigger rebellion among those still loyal to the Foca's name. The solution Tzimiskes devises is elegant in its cruelty. He will spare your son's life, but only if you agree to marry him, legitimizing his rule through connection to the Macedonian bloodline, just as Nycphros had done. The proposal is delivered by Bringas, who has managed to survive yet another imperial transition by making himself indispensable to the new regime. His words are honeyed poison, speaking of honor and duty while describing a trap from which there can be no escape. Empress Theodora, he says, using your title though you both know it hangs by the thinnest of threads. His Imperial Majesty John Tzimiskes offers you the honor of remaining empress, of continuing to serve the empire that your noble blood has graced. Your son would be acknowledged as heir, your position secured, your future assured. The unspoken alternative hangs in the air between you like an executioner's blade. Refuse, and both you and Constantine will follow Nycphros into death. The second imperial wedding of your life takes place just 3 months after your husband's murder. A hasty ceremony designed to present the transition as legitimate succession, rather than bloody usurpation. You stand once again before the altar in Hagia Sophia, but this time you are no innocent girl trading virginity for security. You are a widow of 29, who has learned that survival requires the willingness to sacrifice everything: honor, dignity, even love on the altar of necessity. John Tzimiskes is a different kind of emperor than Nycphros was, younger and more politically astute, gifted with the charm that makes men want to follow him into battle. Where your first husband was granite, immovable and harsh, your second is quicksilver, brilliant, unpredictable, dangerous in ways that are harder to defend against. He understands that ruling requires more than military genius. It demands the ability to inspire loyalty through personality as much as fear. Your wedding night with the man who murdered your husband is a masterpiece of psychological complexity. Tzimiskes approaches you with a gentleness that might be mistaken for kindness if you did not know its true purpose. He seeks not just your body, but your complicity, your willingness to play the role of devoted wife to your husband's killer. We are bound together now, he whispers as his hands explore territory that once belonged to a dead man. By necessity, if not by love, but perhaps love will come in time. The irony cuts deep. You find yourself physically responding to a man you hate, your body betraying your mind's firm resolve. This too is a lesson in the complex mathematics of survival. Sometimes the heart and flesh must be sacrificed to preserve the soul's essential core. You learn to compartmentalize, to separate the woman who submits in the imperial bedchamber from the mother who plots in the shadows for her son's survival. Your son Constantine becomes both your greatest vulnerability and your most potent weapon. Tzimisk's, having no male heirs of his own, finds himself genuinely fond of the boy, perhaps seeing in him the son he never had. But you know that affection in the imperial court is as changeable as weather, and today's beloved child can become tomorrow's threat. You begin Constantine's education and survival, teaching him the same lessons you are still learning: how to be indispensable without appearing ambitious, how to inspire loyalty without threatening those in power. The years of Tzimisk's reign pass in a blur of military campaigns and domestic intrigue. Like Nitros before him, John proves himself a brilliant general, extending Roman authority deep into Syria and Palestine. But each absence from the capital creates opportunities for conspiracy, and you find yourself serving as his eyes and ears in Constantinople. The irony is exquisite. The widow of the man he murdered becomes his most valuable ally. In maintaining the throne he seized through treachery, you learn to play a double game of staggering complexity, appearing to be the dutiful wife while secretly building your own power base. The network of relationships you cultivate extends throughout the empire. Provincial governors, who remember your father's reign with fondness. Military commanders, who served under Nitros and still honor his memory. Church officials who value stability over legitimacy. Each connection is a thread in a web that grows stronger with every passing month. In 976, after 7 years of marriage to your husband's murderer, fate offers you an unexpected gift. John Tzimisk's dies suddenly during a campaign in Bulgaria. Some say of fever, others whisper of poison. The irony is perfect. The man who seized power through assassination meets his end far from home, his body carried back to Constantinople in an imperial sarcophagus that might as well be a prison. With Tzimisk's death, you face the most critical moment of your life. Your son Constantine is now 22 years old, trained in statecraft and warfare, possessed of both the military reputation inherited from his stepfather and the imperial bloodline that flows from your father. But the throne is not his by right, and in the Byzantine Empire, rights must be claimed through strength or cunning, preferably both. The crisis deepens when news arrives that Basil, your half-brother and the son of Emperor Constantine Porphyrogenitus, by his second wife, is marching on the capital with an army recruited from the themes of Asia Minor. For 16 years, Basil has been watching from the sidelines as usurpers claimed the throne that should have been his, and now he sees his opportunity. The civil war that follows will determine not just who rules the empire, but whether the Macedonian dynasty survives at all. In the desperate weeks that follow, you make the most crucial decision of your political career. Rather than supporting your son's claim to the throne, you choose to negotiate with your half-brother, offering him something no amount of military victory could provide: legitimacy through marriage to the rightful empress. The proposal you send to Basil's camp is crafted with the precision of a master diplomat and the ruthlessness of a born survivor. Brother, you write, using a term that carries both familial affection and political calculation. The empire bleeds, while we fight over shadows. You have the stronger army, but I have the stronger claim not to rule, but to legitimize rule. Marry me, and bind together what civil war threatens to tear apart. Our children will unite the bloodlines that have kept the empire strong for centuries. The marriage proposal shocks both your son and Basil's supporters, but it also reveals your true genius for political survival. By offering to marry your half-brother a match that violates neither civil nor canon law, since you share only one parent, you transform yourself from obstacle to opportunity. Instead of being the widow who must be eliminated or neutralized, you become the key to unifying the competing factions that threaten to destroy the empire. The negotiations that follow are delicate as any diplomatic dance, conducted through intermediaries who must balance the competing demands of military necessity and political legitimacy. Basil, now 38 years old and hardened by years of waiting for his chance at power, initially resists the proposal. The idea of marrying his half-sister, even for political advantage, strikes him as desperate and potentially scandalous. But you have learned to think several moves ahead. In the great game of imperial politics, through Bringas, who has once again managed to position himself as indispensable. To all sides you make clear that your support comes with conditions. Your son Constantine must be acknowledged as heir, your own position as empress must be restored, and the purge of Tzimisk's supporters must be limited to prevent the kind of bloodbath that weakens empires from within. Most importantly, you invoke the ancient precedent of the pharaohs, reminding Basil that divine rulers have always lived by different laws than common mortals. The Emperor Justinian married his niece Theodora, you point out in one of your messages, and their union brought glory to the empire. We are Macedonians, heirs to Alexander, children of those who conquered the world. Shall we be bound by the Small minds and smaller hearts of lesser men. The marriage negotiations become a masterpiece of Byzantine complexity, involving not just the bride and groom, but the Patriarch of Constantinople, who must provide religious sanction, and the Senate, which must offer political approval. Each detail must be negotiated: the ceremony's location, the guests to be invited, the precise wording of the imperial proclamation that will transform potential scandal into divine necessity. When Basil finally agrees to the marriage, it is with the understanding that this union serves the empire's needs rather than personal desire. But you have learned that marriages made for political reasons can evolve into something deeper, and you begin the delicate work of transforming contractual obligation into genuine partnership. Your years of experience in managing imperial husbands serve you well as you navigate the complex personality of a man who has spent decades nurturing his ambitions in exile. The wedding ceremony, held in the autumn of 976, is designed to emphasize continuity rather than innovation. Unlike your previous marriages, which were contracted to bind together disparate factions, this union represents the healing of wounds within the imperial family itself. The symbolism is carefully orchestrated. You and Basil appear as co-rulers, rather than husband and wife, equal partners in the sacred duty of governing the Roman Empire. As you stand beside your half-brother in Hagia Sophia for the third time in your life, exchanging marriage vows before the altar where Christ Pantocrator gazes down from the golden dome, you reflect on the strange journey that has brought you to this moment. The innocent girl who was traded away at 15 has become a woman who shapes the destiny of empires through her own choices. The victim has become the architect of her own fate. Your marriage to Basil, who takes the imperial name Basil II, proves to be the most successful of your three unions, built on mutual respect and shared understanding of imperial responsibility. Unlike Nekhphros, who saw you as a breeding mare, or Tzimisk's, who valued you as political necessity, Basil recognizes you as a partner whose experience and intelligence complement his own strengths. Together, you begin the work of rebuilding an empire weakened by decades of civil conflict. The early years of your joint reign are marked by a series of calculated moves, designed to consolidate power while appearing to embrace reconciliation. The supporters of previous regimes are not purged wholesale, but carefully integrated into the new administration, their loyalty purchased through strategic appointments and generous rewards. Your son Constantine, now 24 and bearing the title of Caesar, serves as a bridge between the old factions and the new order. But your greatest innovation lies in the transformation of imperial marriage itself from political necessity into religious sacrament. Working closely with Patriarch Nicholas Chrysoburges, you develop a theological justification for your union that draws on both Christian theology and imperial tradition. The marriage between you and Basil is presented not as sibling incest, but as the restoration of cosmic order, the healing of divisions that have weakened the empire's divine mandate. The doctrine you help create that imperial siblings can marry when the empire's survival demands it will influence Byzantine political theory for centuries to come. By grounding your marriage in theological necessity rather than personal desire, you transform what might have been seen as scandal into sacred duty. Future imperial marriages will be judged not by conventional moral standards, but by their service to imperial stability and divine will. Your influence over imperial policy becomes most apparent in the realm of foreign affairs, where your decades of experience in reading the intentions of ambitious men serve the empire well. When Bulgarians or Samuel threatens the northern frontier, you advocate for a strategy that combines military pressure with diplomatic isolation, using your network of contacts throughout the Orthodox world to deny him potential allies. The campaign that follows lasts 14 years, but ultimately results in the complete destruction of the Bulgarian Empire and its incorporation into Roman territory. Perhaps more significantly, you begin to transform the role of empress from ceremonial position to active partnership in governance. Previous imperial wives had wielded influence primarily through their relationships with their husbands or their roles as mothers of heirs. You establish a different model, one in which the empress serves as co-ruler in her own right, responsible for specific areas of administration and policy. Your particular expertise becomes the management of the empire's vast network of spies, informants, and diplomatic agents. The intelligence service that you had developed to ensure your own survival now serves the broader needs of imperial security. From your private apartments in the Great Palace, you coordinate activities that extend from the court of the Caliph in Baghdad to the barbarian kingdoms beyond the Danube. The transformation of your public image is equally remarkable. The same courtiers who once whispered about the foreign general's wife now speak in awed tones of the divine empress whose wisdom guides imperial policy. Your appearances at court ceremonies become theatrical performances designed to display not just imperial dignity but divine authority. The purple silk that once felt like a shroud has become a banner of triumph. Your relationship with your son Constantine evolves as well. From the desperate protectiveness of a mother guarding her child to the careful mentoring of an experienced ruler preparing her successor. Though he is not Basil's biological son, the emperor treats him as heir apparent, understanding that the boy's claim to legitimacy strengthens the entire dynasty. You watch with pride and careful attention as Constantine grows into a man capable of bearing the weight of imperial responsibility. The personal cost of your transformation, however, remains enormous. The woman who once wept over her murdered children has learned to calculate the value of human life in terms of political utility. The girl who dreamed of love has become an empress who understands that affection is a luxury that rulers cannot afford. Even your relationship with Basil, built on mutual respect and genuine partnership, lacks the emotional intimacy that ordinary people take for granted. In your private moments, rare as they are, you sometimes wonder what might have happened if your father had chosen differently, if you had been allowed to marry for love rather than strategy, if your children had been permitted to grow up as children rather than pawns in the great game of power. But such thoughts are dangerous luxuries that can undermine the careful control you have built over decades of struggle. The woman who indulges in regret is the woman who becomes vulnerable to her enemies. As the new millennium approaches, bringing with it apocalyptic fears and millennial hopes, you find yourself approaching 50, an age that represents genuine achievement for someone who has navigated the deadly currents of Byzantine politics for 3.5 decades. Your marriage to Basil has lasted 24 years, longer than many dynasties have survived, and the empire under your joint rule has achieved a stability and prosperity not seen since the days of Justinian. Your greatest triumph comes in 1014 with the final defeat of Samuel's Bulgarian Empire at the Battle of Clydian. The victory is so complete that it effectively ends Bulgarian independence for the next 2 centuries, incorporating vast territories into the empire and adding millions of new subjects to Imperial rule. As the news of triumph reaches Constantinople, you stand beside Basil on the palace balcony, receiving the acclamations of a people who have learned to see you not as a foreign intruder, but as the architect of their prosperity. But even in triumph, you remain vigilant against the threats that success inevitably brings. The provincial governors, who have grown wealthy administering the new territories, must be watched for signs of excessive ambition. The military commanders, who have won glory in the Bulgarian campaigns, must be rotated to prevent them from building dangerously personal loyalties among their troops. The church officials who have praised your victories must be reminded that imperial favor can be withdrawn as easily as it was granted. Your network of informants brings you intelligence of threats, both foreign and domestic. The young Otto III, Holy Roman Emperor in the West, dreams of recreating Charlemagne's empire and views Byzantine strength as an obstacle to his ambitions. The Fatimid Caliph in Cairo watches the empire's expansion with growing concern, knowing that successful Roman arms in the Balkans may soon turn toward Egypt and Palestine. Closer to home, ambitious courtiers continue their eternal dance of advancement and betrayal, seeking opportunities in the spaces between policy and personality. Managing these multiple challenges requires a level of strategic thinking that goes far beyond traditional feminine roles in Byzantine society. You find yourself thinking not just in terms of months or years but in terms of generations, laying foundations for imperial stability that will outlast your own lifetime. The institutions you help create, the intelligence services, the diplomatic protocols, the administrative systems become part of the empire's permanent structure. Your influence extends into areas that previous empresses rarely touched: military logistics, provincial administration, commercial policy, religious doctrine all bear the mark of your involvement. The transformation is so complete that foreign ambassadors report to their masters that the Roman Empire appears to be ruled by 2 emperors rather than an emperor and his wife. The title Augusta that you bear carries weight equivalent to any masculine imperial designation. The question of succession becomes increasingly important as both you and Basil age. Your son Constantine, now approaching 40, has proven himself capable in both military and civilian roles, but the empire's security depends on more than individual competence. The institutional changes you have helped implement must survive the inevitable transition to new leadership. The precedents you have established for female participation in governance must be preserved for future generations. To this end, you begin the delicate work of preparing your own succession, identifying and training the women who might serve as partners to future emperors. Your network of relationships among the aristocratic families of Constantinople becomes a recruiting ground for potential empresses, women who possess both the intelligence and the ruthlessness necessary for survival at the highest levels of power. The model of imperial marriage that you have created based on partnership rather than subordination requires partners worthy of the role. As you approach your 60th year in 1000, you reflect on the extraordinary transformation you have undergone. The terrified 15-year-old who was traded away to secure a military alliance has become the most powerful woman in the Christian world, co-ruler of an empire that stretches from the Danube to the Euphrates. The victim of dynastic marriage has become its master, using the very institution that once enslaved her as a tool for achieving unprecedented authority. The cost, however, has been everything that most people consider essential to human happiness: love, family, personal autonomy, emotional intimacy. All have been sacrificed on the altar of political necessity. The children you bore have been pawns in games larger than their individual lives. The men you married have been partners in power rather than companions of the heart. The friendships you have cultivated have been strategic relationships rather than emotional connections. Yet there is a satisfaction in what you have accomplished that transcends personal happiness. The empire you help rule is stronger, more prosperous, and more secure than it has been in centuries. The institutions you have helped create will serve future generations long after your death. The precedents you have established will give other women opportunities for power that would have been unimaginable when you first entered the palace as a frightened girl. Your greatest achievement may be the transformation of victimization into agency. The system that sought to use you as currency has been redirected to serve your purposes. The marriages that were meant to diminish you have become sources of unprecedented authority. The very forces that threatened to destroy you have been harnessed to create something new and powerful in the world. As the new millennium dawns over Constantinople, you stand at the pinnacle of earthly power, wearing the purple that once felt like chains, but has become the visible symbol of your triumph over circumstances that would have crushed a lesser person. The girl who was forced into marriage with her father's enemies has become the woman who shapes the destiny of empires through her own choices. The bells of Hagia Sophia ring out across the capital, calling the faithful to prayer and announcing the beginning of a new age. In their bronze voices, you hear both celebration and warning: celebration of what has been achieved, warning of the challenges yet to come. The empire you have helped build will face new threats in the century ahead, and the institutions you have created will be tested by forces you cannot imagine. But you have done what was required of you and more. You have not merely survived the system that sought to consume you. You have transformed it into something that serves your purposes and those of the empire you love. The chains that once bound you have become the purple that elevates you. The weakness that once defined you has become the strength that defines an age. In the end, that transformation from victim to architect of destiny may be the most remarkable achievement of any reign in Byzantine history. The empire has been ruled by conquerors and saints, by philosophers and warriors, but never before by someone who has so completely transcended the circumstances of their birth to create something entirely new in the world. As you prepare to hand power to the next generation, you do so with the knowledge that you have changed not just your own fate, but the very nature of imperial rule itself. The precedents you have established will echo through the centuries, giving future generations of women tools for achieving power that you had to forge in the fire of your own experience. The innocent girl who once trembled before her father's throne has become the divine empress, whose authority rivals that of the emperors themselves. The transformation is complete, and its effects will reshape the Byzantine Empire for centuries to come. You have not merely survived the deadly game of imperial politics, you have rewritten its rules to ensure that survival is possible for those with the intelligence and determination to play it well. The purple chains that once bound you have become the golden crown that marks your triumph over destiny itself.